Just who is the M5 really for? It turns out there's a lot of personality with this brand new M5. So we've decided to highlight a couple of the identities associated with this new M vehicle. I know what you're saying. I'm so sick of hearing about how much fun the M5 is to drive. But how is it as a family vehicle? And how can I convince my wife to get one? Well, don't worry. This car has plenty of cargo space, with over 18 cubic feet of storage in the trunk, which is more than key rivals from Mercedes-AMG, like that E63. It's also got a lot of space for your kids in the back seat. And that trunk space can even be expanded when you fold down the rear seats. However, unlike the AMG E63, you can't get the M5 as a wagon. To mimic what my father would say, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. And furthermore, if you have multiple drivers in this car, it's actually pretty easy to set up different profiles, not just for the seats, but for the driving modes. By using the two customizable M buttons, you can set the two different M buttons for each driver. One person can have a very comfy setup and the other one can be more aggressive. I'm sure that's not the way BMW envisioned those M buttons to be used, but hey, it works. And those M buttons are designed to actually access the M Dynamics mode and the full potential of this vehicle. If you set it up correctly, this thing can actually be a pretty bonkers sports car. And don't at me by saying that a 4,300-pound sedan can't actually be fun to drive, because this car will take that argument and show you what a twin-turbo V8 can do with it. This engine makes 600 horsepower and just over 550 pound-feet of torque. Yes, it's a little bit less powerful than the E63 AMG, but this car can do 0 to 60 in just over 3 seconds. And if you get the additional performance package, it can do 189 miles per hour, which is much quicker than the Mercedes E63. Now, a major part of that has to do with this fantastic 8-speed automatic transmission. And there's so much versatility in this powertrain. You can set up the engine in 3 settings, and even the transmission in 3 additional settings, depending on how harsh or how comfortable you want the car to feel. But more than that, this car can actually handle pretty nicely. There are also 3 degrees of variability for the steering and suspension setup, and even the all-wheel drive and traction control setting can be varied dynamically. And that means if you want to, you can make this car feel like a full rear-wheel drive sporty car. However, I have to admit, real sports cars don't feel this heavy, and they also tend to come with a manual transmission. And while this car has paddle shifters, it just doesn't fill the void that you would get in a true sports car. And one final thing to add is that this car comes with an optional M exhaust system, which I'm sure sounds great, but this car has so much sound insulation that you don't quite hear it. To think that something this big can be this fast, I just was not expecting it. And it actually does handle and grip really well. It's not a complete sports car, but it is still so thrilling and exciting to drive. And that brings us to the other personality of the M5. When you turn off all of the sporty and loud bits, this car is actually quite comfortable. And it even has rear sunshades like this to protect yourself from the outside world. And trust me, that UV stuff is just doing terrors on my complexion. I love the fact that there's 4-zone climate control, and these seats are just so soft and luxurious feeling. Not only that, but it's just so quiet in here. And that's perfect for telling your driver to get going and on with the world. In fact, Jeffrey, take me to that yacht club. And this car actually has a lot of functionality for the driver as well. The advanced driver assistance package actually helps this car stay centered in its lane, and the adaptive cruise control will help you stay out of any trouble. It actually feels really natural. The brakes are just so fantastic feeling. And pair that to the very capable engine, and this car will get you and your passenger to wherever you're going with ease. Now, in addition to that, the driver will also feel pretty comfortable. This car has vented seats up front, and in case you have a bit of a hard ass for a boss, the massage seats are pretty comfortable as well. But is this car the perfect limousine? I'd say not so, because the CT6 from Cadillac can be offered with Super Cruise functionality, which has legitimate hands-free semi-autonomous driving. And then there's the Tesla Autopilot, which can actually perform lane changes for you. This car doesn't have either of the capability of those two cars, but still it's pretty advanced feeling, and it does get you to where you're going to without worrying about things like traffic. But who can relax in here when you've just got so many gadgets and gizmos to talk about? Some might call them mere gimmicks, but I think there's some really cool next generation technology. For example, this gesture control stuff is a total gimmick, but every time I show my friends it, they just come away so impressed. In fact, everyone who leaves this cabin has something to talk about, whether it's the high resolution display, those gimmicks, the head-up display, or even that BMW display key. It's a shame that Apple CarPlay is an additional extra in this car, and there's no Android Auto support just yet. But the thing I really enjoy about this car is the Bowers & Wilkins sound system, which has a 10-channel, 16-speaker, 1400-watt output. It's almost as powerful as the engine itself. Some people might say that the car is the worst place to listen to music, but the BMW M5 with this sound system makes a pretty convincing argument. But is it really the most high-tech car on the road? I'd argue an electric vehicle like a Jaguar or a Tesla has slightly more tech cachet. That brings us to the final personality of the M5, that of an overachiever. You see, this car can just do so much, and it doesn't quite excel at any one thing. You see, if you wanted a dedicated family car, you could probably just get an X5 or something. And if you wanted a real sports car, maybe a Porsche Cayman is the better choice. And then if you wanted something that was perfect for, being a luxury vehicle or being driven around in, a 7 Series might do the job. Or like I said before, that Cadillac CT6 with Super Cruise. But then again, if you want the ultimate geek out machine, you probably want something that's a little super high tech, like the BMW i8 or an i3 even, with that electric powertrain. This car combines all of the aspects of that into one vehicle. So you end up actually saving a little bit of money instead of buying 4 separate cars. And it's definitely easier to find 1 parking spot instead of 4. With 600 horsepower on tap, the M5 is plenty fast, but it's also plenty usable as a family car or daily driver. Sure, it's pretty expensive, but who has the space and money for 4 specialized vehicles? If you want one car that can do it all, the M5 might be the perfect choice.